Okay, hello everybody. We are going to go into our class 4, TMX and TBX. So here we go. This is session 4. We will be learning about TMX and TBX. These slides will cover the concepts in the 4th session. This is an online session. You'll be viewing this at YouTube. I would encourage you, at the end, we will have some exercise to please take your time and complete the exercises. These exercises will help you when it comes time to do your projects for this class. And again, you can stop the recording, you can rewind the recording and go at your own pace. And always, always, always ask me if you have any questions. But let's get into it. Today, we are going to go over TMX and TBX, and hopefully you were able to read all of the good information on those URLs that you could find in your syllabus. Next week, we will have a quiz on XLIF Core, TMX, and TBX, and then we will go over the XLIF modules. So please read those assignments that are in your syllabus. So preparing for today's class, we are learning to solve real-world translation localization challenges. The following are real-world challenges along with the standards that will solve them. So remember, we have this little cadence where we have sort of challenges. I think I called them FAQs before, but really they're challenges. And let's review one from last week, and then let's go into a couple of new ones for this week. And then we'll have a little preview into a couple that we will see probably in a few classes down the road. So the first challenge we talked about, do we need to send the native file sources directly to our translator or LSP? The answer is only if you want to spend a lot of money on it. Converting it to XLIF is the solution for this challenge. We talked about that in the last class. But for today's class, let's look at some new challenges. This thing I'm sending contains several segments that I've already translated in the past. Isn't there a way to leverage the already translated segments? Answer, yes, as long as you and your localization service provider have been saving your translation pairs in the form of TMX files. But wait, can't I just store them in a spreadsheet? Answer, using the open standard lets you transfer the TM from vendor to vendor and is directly accessible in your computer-aided translation tool or your CAT tool. Challenge 3. In my industry or my company, there are a lot of terms that could be ambiguous to translators who are not necessarily experts in the field. Also, we want to make sure certain terms are always translated correctly, consistent with my company style guide. Can I send a glossary of terms to the translators to keep it all straight? Answer, store your glossary in TBX files. Tools can read these files directly, and TBX defines standardized ways to store and use useful metadata about terms. And again, since it's an open standard, you can pass it from vendor to vendor and they will understand. Challenge 4. My XLIF segment granularity varies, and my TMX and TBX files are not leveraging the things I know I've captured. This seems to be it seems my XLIF is sometimes segmented at the phrase, sometimes at the sentence, and sometimes at the paragraph, sometimes at the list, and sometimes at whole list. Isn't there a way I can tell XLIF and my LSP how to segment consistently in a way that best works for my business? Now, this is for a future class, but the answer is yes, SRX. It's an open standard supported by the tools, and it works. And let's just do another future class challenge. I struggled to convey best practices to my content providers in terms of preparing the source content in ways that it will be optimal for translation and conversion to XLIF. I wish there was a way I could add processing for localization and translation directly into my DocBook data SVG HTML files? Answer, you can. It's called ITS. You can put a ton of great translation aids right into your source XML tools, and best of all, it's all turnkey with HTML5. And then our last challenge that we'll be looking at in a future class, I'm at odds with my LSP as to how to measure the translation efforts and how much I should pay. Going by word count works for some of it, but many languages like Japanese, Chinese, and others, there are no such concepts as a word. What metrics can I use cross-paradigm? The answer is GMX. All of this has been solved and in a way that is unambiguous and traceable to an open standard. So those are the challenges. Let's jump right into today's challenges. We talked about TMX and TBX. Let's start with TMX. TMX is a translation memory open standard. Translation memory exchange is an open standard for the exchange of translation memory. It's available at that Gala website there, TMX 14b. Translation tools use TMX to leverage and add to translation memory. TMX 14b specification passed a long time ago, April 2005. It has a specification and it has a DTD. Now let's make a distinction here. Translation memory enables the translation of segments, sentences, paragraphs, or phrases of documents by searching for similar segments in a collection and suggesting matches that are found. This is a quote from Rodolfo at Max Programs. A translation memory system remembers translations that have been typed by a human translator. When the translator needs to work on a similar text, the system offers previously saved version. This can save a lot of time when a translator works with repetitive text, such as technical manuals, and it also helps to achieve terminological consistency found in the database. Okay, so that URL is where you can find that quote. So let's see an example of how that works. We start off with any old XML file or any old document file. Remember, in our XML segment, we learned how to transform many common document formats and commercial software formats into XML. So from there, we would have the XML, and in this case, we have a DITA topic. It has 3 paragraphs. Nirvana was an American grunge band from Aberdeen in the state of Washington. The Clash, founded in London in 1976, is considered one of the most influential early punk bands alongside other bands such as the Ramones and the Sex Pistols. Soundgarden is an American grunge band from Seattle. So we have this DITA file, and we convert it to XLIF, and we open it in our computer-aided translation tool. Now remember, the computer-aided translation tool we're using for this class is Swordfish. The screenshot you see on the screen is for an open source computer-aided translation tool that I offer called XMarker, but it's the same concept. So we have this XLIF file. We've taken the translatable text out of that DITA file, and as you can see, they are in segments in the XLIF file. We've accounted for all 3 of those paragraphs. This is a very simple example, but it's meant to illustrate how this works. So then we add the TMX file. In Swordfish, there's a different way to do it, but this screenshot shows how to do it in my open source utility. You set the TMX file, and then you see the TMX file. In this case, we'll take a closer look at what a TMX file looks like, but this is how this particular computer-aided translation file demonstrates or shows the TMX file. So here's the specific code for the TMX. In this case, we've already translated these paragraphs before, and we've saved this in our TMX file. Consider this a database where you have a source segment, and then you have a target segment. In this case, our language pairs are English and German. English, German, English, German. So we have some nice previously translated segments. So we will run the process that shows the translation candidates. So in this case, there's an XLIF module called Translation Candidates. We will review exactly how the XLIF modules work, but for now, we're just going to look at some screenshots just so that we understand that TMX can be leveraged by XLIF using open standards. So if we use that module, we'll see that we have this namespace that says MTC matches, and then we have a candidate language pair that the translator then can look at and say, does that match my context? And if the answer is yes, they would then accept this match, and it would be injected into the XLIF file, and then we would have a language pair for, in this case, English, German, English, German, English, German in our XLIF file. From there, we would transform it back into its native file format. In this case, it would be DITA. So you see that we started off, I'm going to backspace up to the original DITA file. Excuse the, hope nobody gets dizzy when I do this, but remember we had our original DITA file, and it was in English, and then we did all of these steps, and then we ended up with our translated DITA file. In this case, it's now German. Okay, so let's get out of PowerPoint paralysis and let's do an exercise. This is going to be a TMX exercise. You will be able to do all of these exercises with the materials that are in the D2L, and I'll show you how to get those materials. I would encourage you to go ahead and do this exercise because this exercise will help you when it comes time to doing the one of the projects for this class. But I'm going to go over the steps first, and then I'm going to break away from PowerPoint, and we'll actually do the exercise together. There may be, you'll be using a utility called Saxon, and you'll need to access Saxon from the command line, and Saxon will need Java to run. Most computers you buy today have Java already installed. If your computer does not have Java installed, don't panic. I will show you how to install it from files that you can download from the internet. And if you have any trouble, please set up a time with me and I'll walk you through it. So anyway, here's how this exercise works. We're going to download the TMX utility from D2L. We will go into our resource, we'll go into content, and then we'll go into our resource files, and there will be a utility called TMX utility. And spoiler alert, in a future exercise within this class, we will also do the TBX utility, but I will cover those separately. So when we get that, we'll download those that utility, and we'll put it in the ET folder that we've already created. And in that ET folder on your desktop, after you've unzipped the file, you'll see a TMX user guide file. It's a Microsoft Word file. And together, we will follow the directions. One of the things that you'll notice, though, before I break out of this PowerPoint paralysis is we will be using the command line. One of the students last week mentioned to me that the link that I had in the syllabus had been moved. So I'm going to replace it with this particular URL. The nice thing I like about this URL if you need to practice with the command line or learn the command line, is that it gives you Windows, Mac, and Linux all in the same tutorial. So that's pretty handy. So anyway, I will carefully show you how to use the command line, but if you need some help, I would recommend that tutorial. So you'll need to invoke the command line. If you're doing that in Windows 10, you'll want to go under Windows System, and you'll click that command prompt. As I said before, when I'm on Windows, I use the command prompt so much, I just dragged it down to my ribbon, and it's very convenient for me to have it there. If you're using an older version of Windows, like Windows 8, it's in the Accessories area. And if you're on Mac, like me, that's what I'll be demonstrating with, you go into your Utilities and you'll find the Terminal app. All three of those ways will get you access to your command line. So I'm going to break out of this PowerPoint and I'm going to do this exercise with you. So in D2L, we have our resources. We'll go into Content, and we'll go into Resource Files, and then we'll go into the TMX utility, and we'll go ahead and we'll download that. And in order to save you time, I'm going to access my ET folder, and I have already downloaded this utility and unzipped it. So I'll put that on the screen in just a moment here. Get rid of a few things so that it's in the shape that you will find yours in when you unzip it. One moment. As I always say in these recordings, unless I make an egregious mistake, I'm just going to keep plowing through. So what you'll find in this ET folder is we did our XML exercises last week, and then this week in that same folder we're going to do our TMX utilities. So when you unzip that, in Windows you would right click and you would open with, and then you would uncompress. In Mac, you simply double click it and it creates this utility folder for you. Okay, so in here, the first thing we need to find is our utility, our, oops, wrong one. I don't want Outlook, sorry, ignore that. I wanted my Word files. So here we have our syllabus, and we're going to go into the TMX utility. And here we have this TMX utility. I'm going to zoom it in a little bit. One moment here. Resize that. And move this up here. Get it nice for the screen so everybody can see this. There we go. So let's zoom this in a little bit. Okay, so it says to download this utility file. We've already done that. Unzip it in the folder. We've already done that. And it creates a folder called TMX utility. We're going to create a spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel. The first column, we're going to enter source segments. And in the second column, we're going to enter translations. So I will grab okay, there we go. So I'm going to grab Excel. And I'm going to go through the steps that we have here. And I'm going to get a blank workbook. Okay. And it says that I should have in my column A my target language, which will be ENUS. And my target language, I'm going to go ahead and use German because I'm comfortable with German. So you can use whatever you want. Okay. And I'm going to then create some language pairs. And I think we're going to need, do I say how many? In the second row, enter the code, okay, and save. Okay, got it. So I'm just going to create some segments, and you can do the same. So let's just say that I have a document where, oh, let's see here. Oops, move this out of the way. Okay, I'm going to say, these are going to be my segments. Let's say, let's get, you know what? Let's just go here. I've got an idea. Let's go to, just get some strings. Let's go to pdx.edu. You don't have to do this. This is just me looking for strings. You're actually going to pick some subject that you're familiar with. And I am going to go just grab a few from here. I'm going to grab this one. And that's going to be one of my segments in English. Just go ahead and wrap that. Okay, and I'll go back to let's grab this one, and then let's just say, let's just take this link, see where that takes us. Grab that one. No, I'm going to grab that whole thing. This will be a segment. I want to make sure I get the period too. Let's just do it this way. My mouse is acting funny. I'll just type the period in. Okay. Grab that. And we'll put that in here. And let's grab a couple more. Grab this one. Oops. Okay. And let's grab just a couple more. Let's grab that one. Okay, and one more, just to be, and let's grab this. These will be my English strings. Okay, and now I will translate these to German. Okay, that's a good German translation. Let's wrap this text. I'll grab this one. And let's go ahead and translate that one. And we'll grab that one. And we'll translate this one into German. Grab this one. Okay. German. Okay. One more. Almost there. There we go. Okay, let's save this. Save it in my ET folder. Okay, I'm going to call this PSU. And now, oops, it says to save the Excel spreadsheet and name it as an XML spreadsheet and name it mytmx.xml. So if you're using an older version of Excel, one of your options is to save it as an XML spreadsheet 2003.xml. Or if you're using a newer version, you can save it as Excel 2004. In my particular case, I'm going to need to save it as Excel 2004. So that's what I'll do. I will file save as XML 2004, and I'm going to call it, go back to my instructions, my capital M TMX.xml. Okay, so it's going to be my TMX.xml. Okay, and I'm going to save that. Let's say that's yes. Okay, so now I have my tmx.xml. Okay, so now I'm going to invoke the command line. Remember, if you're doing that in Mac, you would do it through Terminal, Utilities and Terminal. If you're doing it in Windows, for Windows 8, you would use Accessories Command Prompt. And for Windows 10, you would use Windows System Command Prompt. By the way, I'm going to give you plenty of time to become familiar with the command prompt and to become familiar with Saxon, which we're going to be using. But for now, I'm going to keep this moving, and remember, you'll have plenty of time to change the recording or to do whatever you need to do to become comfortable. Reverse, rewind, do whatever it takes. Okay, so here we go. Let's then, I'm going to pull up the command line in my application here, which is Mac, and I'm going to follow the follow the instructions. Oh, I'm really having trouble with my mouse, but that's okay. And I'm going to invoke Windows, and I'm going to navigate to my TMX utility folder. So let's do that. If I were in Windows, I would do a dir, but since I'm in Mac, I'm going to do ls and enter. And then I see that my desktop is one of my choices there, so I'm going to do cd space desktlp. I'm going to change directories to my desktop, and then I'm going to cd to my et directory. And I'm going to do an ls. If I were in Windows, I would do a dir, and I'm going to cd to, by the way, cd means change directory, to tbx-utility. And then I'm going to do an ls. And I'm going to see that I have my tbx.xml, or do I? I have tbx.xsl. So this step, my tbx.xsl, let's just take a look at what's in that directory. Let's go right into here. My tmx.xml is there. Okay. Oh, I'm in tbx. My bad. cd space ... gives me a level up. And then I'm going to do an ls. And I want it to be in TMX utility, not TBX, TMX. So I'll do a cd to TMX utility. That's more like it. Now if I do an ls, I see that XML file that I just created by using in step 5 of this instruction. So let's go then to our instructions here. And step 7 says type java -jar saxon9.jar -o my tmx.tmx for the output, my tmx.xml for the input, and tmx.xsl, and then press enter or return. So I'm going to do exactly that. This is, by the way, what we're using. We're using an XSL. Remember, we learned about XSL in class 2, and we're using XSL to create from XML a TBX file that follows all of the rules of TBX. By the way, let's just take a quick look at that file before we translate it. So that XML file that we just created, we can take a look in our text editor. In my case, I'll be using the Mac version. And for Windows, you could use text or whatever your text editor is. So let's take a look at that XML file. So basically when we downloaded, or when we saved that as XML, it took that Excel file and it put all of that information that we wanted here, but it did it not in TMX, but rather Excel's XML. So I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to go ahead and type exactly those steps that it says to do in my guide there. So I'm going to type Java, Java, space -jar space -o for output space my TMX dot TMX space, my input file is my TMX dot XML, and my XSL file is TMX dot XSL. I'm going to press enter. Uh-oh. Unable to, I didn't type it exactly right. Okay, I forgot Java, I forgot the Saxon 9. Okay, let's try again. JAVA space dash JAR space Saxon 9, that's the step I left out before, dot jar space -o space my TMX dot TMX. My input file is my TMX dot XML, and my XSL is TMX dot XSL. Now let's try it. Okay, good. And you'll notice that it made this TMX file in that directory or in that folder. So let's pull this text editor back in there. Sublime text. And let's just take a look at this. And indeed, it made a TMX file that has our language pairs for those strings that we just pulled out of the PSU website. And we have some nice translation pairs. Okay. Whew. So we made it through that. That's good. Let's go back into PowerPoint. And okay, here we go. And we will resume our presentation. Okay, we've done that step. Now let's look at TBX. TBX is term-based exchange. It's the open standard for representing structured terminological data, and it's available at that URL there. Translators use TBX to understand and disambiguate terms. Translators know and like TBX. TBX 1.0 was passed October 2008. It has a specification and a DTD. So XLIF enables the tagging of terms. So we learned last week that we have this MRK element that will let us identify something as a term. We then, in our XLIF file, can notice that we have this term. And this is how it looks in this particular computer-aided translation tool. Remember, we're using Swordfish, so it'll look slightly different. And then we have our TMX file, or our TBX file. And again, TBX is meant to disambiguate terms. So if we have a term called concert, we know that it's a music event, and it's a live performance, typically of music before an audience. So that gives our translator a little bit of context around what that term is. So we process that in a way that we show the terms in XLIF. In XLIF, again, this is another module that we'll learn about next time, but we have this GLS namespace, and we have this thing called concert. We happen to have a translation, but TBX is not about translations, but rather about context. So in this case, the context of concert is a live performance, typically before an audience. So we see that then we have this segment in XLIF, and we know exactly how this how this concert is meant to be used. And again, remember we had this rather more ambiguous example where we talk about somebody who may not be familiar with guitars and sees a sentence called "the strings are strummed sometimes with a pick," and we need to disambiguate all of these different ways that pick can be, the different contexts for pick. And then once we do that, we say, okay, then it's easy to disambiguate. So let's do another exercise. What we will do is our TBX exercise. We will download the TBX utility from D2L, very similar to the TMX exercise that we just did. We will locate the TBX user guide and we will follow the directions. So here we go. Let's get out of PowerPoint and let's then go into D2L and let's go to the TBX utility and let's download that into our ET folder, and then let's go into our TBX utility. I've already downloaded it and unzipped it in my ET directory, and what I wanted to find is this TBX user guide. So I found that. This is the TMX, so I want to go into, I don't have that open yet. Okay, so let's get rid of this, and let's open this TBX user guide. Okay, so it says to download the file, we've done that. Unzip it, we've done that. Open the provided spreadsheet template, mytbx.xsl, and add terms using the format provided of the provided examples. You can leave the existing examples rows 2 through 4 if you'd like, and start adding yours on row 5. Column A, for example, is we see pick and we see a target term. We're not going to necessarily use a target term in every case, but then we do have what subject it is and what definition it is. Then we're going to save that spreadsheet, and then we're going to save it as XML, and we're going to name it myTMX. And then we're going to save it, and then we will invoke our command line, and then we will type this Java command. Okay, so let's just see how that works. So I'm going to go back into my window, and I'm going to open this spreadsheet. That's our TMX one, but let's go into this TBX. So there are already some examples there for us. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see that. And then I'm going to go back to my PSU website, and there's a good one I can use. So I'll use room, and I'm going to say that there's no target term, so that's NA. Okay, and I'm going to say that the subject of that is building. I'm going to spell it right. And I'm going to say the definition of a room is a place for people, animals, and things in a building. Sorry, that's the best I can come up with now. Okay. Let's look at some other terms we might find here. Stuff. Okay, stuff will be the term. Let's again say that there's no. Let's do this. And let's say that stuff is subject of possessions. I don't know if I spelled that right or not. Looks like I didn't. And then the definition is things people have. And I notice that I need a space there. And then are there any other terms that we might pull out of here? Testing. Let's use testing. NA subject will be health. And in this context, we're talking about medical preparedness. Okay, so we've got some stuff here. Let's go ahead and save that. I'll save. And then I'm going to do my save as. And for me, the format will be XML 2004. And I'm told in my instructions to save it as my tbx.xml. Okay, so let's do that. My tbx.xml. Okay, so I will save that. Yes. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at that in the text editor. My tbx.xml. And we see that it added these new terms, room, stuff, and testing. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so then my instructions were to invoke my command line, navigate to that directory, and then type this particular command line. So I still have my command line. And in this case, I'm going to cd space ... which means go up one level. I'll do ls, and then I'll cd space tbx-utility, enter, ls, and I see I have my tbx.xml in that folder. So I am to type java -jar space minus, I don't want to make that mistake again, Saxon9 .jar space -o space my tbx space my tbx.xml space tbx.xsl. Okay, looking that over, I don't see any typos, but the truth will come when I hit enter. And it worked. And now I have my tbx. Oh, I typed TBS instead of TBX. I'm just going to correct that here. TBX. Okay, there, that's better. And let's just see what that looks like in our text editor. So I'll just drag that into Sublime. Oops, drag that into. Drag that. My mouse is really acting up. Hopefully you'll get through this recording, then I can figure out what's going on with my mouse. Okay, so I have concert, clash, and now I have room, stuff, and testing. So everything worked as I wanted it to. So great news, we're in good shape. If you have any questions or any concerns about these exercises, about Saxon, if your Java for some reason isn't working, or you just want to learn more about what's going on here, please feel free to get a hold of me, and I will be happy to help you understand this and to get you through any things that might be on your mind. With that, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.